So let's talk about the forehand progression, and let's do it in a biomechanical way. So there are a couple of things that I want you to start thinking about. Number one, rhythm, and number two, body positioning. So rhythm, what does it mean? What you're gonna try to do is mimic the speed of the ball. So if the ball is going slow, we're gonna go slow. If the ball is coming fast, we're gonna move fast. Racket and body. So we're talking about a right-hander person doing a forehand. So we're gonna have to get to the left side of the ball before we start running. So whether the ball is in front of you or behind you, the first thing that you need to do is move to the left and then run forwards, or move to the left and then run backwards. So now that we're in the right position, what we need to be thinking about is the backswing. So ideally we want to go slow because there are going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to get properly positioned on this backswing. So we want to look at the upper body as a unit. So your legs are going to get you to where you're supposed to be, and you're going to try to use your shoulders and your core as a unit to start turning the racket back. Right here, we're trying to position our bodies so that we're going to dominate with the side that is closest to the ball. In this case, the right side for a right-hander person. So we're gonna dominate with the right leg, right arm, right side of your body. It's important to think about your legs because the right leg is gonna start the momentum. You're gonna start using that kinetic change by pushing against the ground, and that energy is gonna come from the legs to your hips, from the hips to your upper body, and eventually from your upper body to your arm. So at this point, the ball hasn't bounced yet, but your body should be far enough from the ball so that when it bounces, you can take a few steps forward and hit through the ball. Ideally, we want to be going forwards when you hit the ball. There are going to be cases when you're going to be late, you're going to be backing up, but the ideal position is for you to be able to transfer the body and the energy forwards. It's super important that right now you start thinking about your core, because the function of your core is to stop rotation, to protect your back. So we want to tighten up your core muscles so that we can keep your upper body as a unit. So tighten up so that you can see that the rotation is happening from the hips and the shoulders, not from your lower back. There's going to be an up and coming video on the core and how crucial it is so you can play tennis and be more accurate and protect your body while you're doing it. By the way, if you're finding good tips so far, please make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. So now you're starting to take that racket back, and like I mentioned in the beginning, you want to try to do it slow because there are a lot of things that are trying to position themselves at the right spot. So that arm, you don't want to have it too close to your body that your elbow is not going to be able to really give you the full potential, but also you don't want it too far from your body, because the farther you get that racket from your body, the heavier it's going to feel and the more effort you're going to put on your back. Remember, we're trying to keep that upper body as perpendicular to the ground without letting it lean to the right or the left. If anything, we're going to be leaning forward towards the ball. It's important for me to mention right now that you need to be thinking about your bicep by bending that elbow, because the moment you don't do that, your body is going to start thinking about your shoulder when it comes to rotation, and you don't want to be doing that. Ideally, when it comes to the topspin, you're going to be thinking about the back of your arm positioning itself, and then your bicep and your forearm doing the majority of the stroke, the fastest part of the stroke. So at this point, the racket is back, and ideally you want to be using your hips to rotate back, your shoulders to rotate back, and eventually your hips and your shoulders to rotate forward. You do not want to use your core to twist. So while that racket is taking that trip back, you want to be thinking about how tight your grip is, because the tighter it is, the less you're going to let the tip of the racket get below the ball. So we want to try to loosen up your grip so that your wrist allows your hand to start dropping the head of the racket and start getting ready to eventually at the end show up again and finish that stroke. So at this point, the ball has bounced, and that to me should be the cue that your backswing should already be at the end of it, and you need to be thinking about going forward. One exercise that I give some of my students is to try to say bounce when the ball bounces, and by the time you finish saying bounce, your racket should be going forward. So bounce and then hit when you hit that. So at this point, you want to be keeping that core tight, because we are dealing with a lot of rotational momentum that eventually we want to turn into a straight line. So again, you're going to be using your hips and your upper body to position yourself. You don't want to be twisting and bringing that upper body by using your spine. So at this point, the ball has bounced and is coming towards you. This is when you need to be thinking about really causing a head-on collision between the ball and your racket. You don't want the ball to come to you, you want to come to the ball. So at this point, your body needs to be transferring all that energy from that rotational momentum forward into the ball. So at this point, you really need to be thinking about accuracy. In the beginning, you did a good job getting out of the way of the ball, positioning your body in the direction of the ball, drawing a straight line between your core and your target. So right now, what you really want to be thinking is to try to imagine that you could line up your belly button to your target. Let's say that I'm going inside out. So I'm going to try to, knowing that I'm going to rotate a little bit, my belly button is going to stop right when it's pointing to my target. Again, the function of your core is to stop rotation. It's not to induce more spinning of your back. It's to stop that rotation so that you can protect your back and allow your shoulders and your hip to complete the stroke. By the way, if you're finding good tips so far, please make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. So right now we're getting ready to make contact. We've already rotated and we're getting ready to touch that ball. This is when you really want to try to think about extending that contact. So we're not going to be leading with the bottom of the racket. We're not going to be leading with the tip of the racket. We're going to try and lead with the entire racket. So if my target is to my right, then I'm going to try to keep that racket pointing towards the ball as long as I can. Now, keep in mind that the longer you do this and the faster you do that, the deeper that the ball is gonna go. So you have to match it at the end with more topspin. It's math. You put a lot of effort and a lot of speed, you better make sure that you put some brakes at the end of the stroke. So right now we have carried that ball long enough and fast enough that it's time to start thinking about topspin. So you need to start thinking about anchoring that elbow. So ideally, when it's time to start that rotation from right to left, you want to keep that elbow as the pivoting joint. The moment that your elbow moves, the back of your arm is going to get too close to your chest and you're going to take away all this muscle. So you need enough distance between your arm and your chest so that you can do a nice rotation. A lot of times I tell my students, pretend that you're hugging a beach ball at the end when you're doing your stroke. So enough distance between your chest and your arm. This is the moment when you really need to think about protecting your back. This is one of the fastest moments of the stroke when your upper arm is gonna go left really quick. So if you don't hold on tight to your core, that momentum is gonna throw you to the left. And guess what? When you start leaning to the left, then you're gonna put a lot of weight on all the different discs that now are no longer straight. So the ideal position is for your body to try to keep that straight line perpendicular to the ground. I don't mean you need to be sitting this way, because at this point you need to be leaning forward to the stroke, but you don't want to be leaning back to your left. So let's talk about muscles at this point, and let's talk about your body. Your body is a mechanism that is unbelievably wise. We have muscles in the front and muscles in the back, and they need to work as a team. So a muscle in the back is going to tighten up, while a muscle in the front is going to tighten up. And guess what? What that's going to cause is it's going to keep you in a neutral position. So right now we're thinking about your bicep, which is going to contract, but guess what? Your tricep is going to control the bicep and is going to keep it from going a little bit too far and hurting itself. So tighten up the bicep and tighten out the tricep, anchor that elbow, and then finish the stroke. At this point, you really want to try to think a little bit more about accuracy, and guess what? Your elbow is going to help you do that. If you keep that elbow pointing towards your target, it's not only going to help you go forward towards the target, but it's going to help your back not go left. So between your core and your elbow, you're going to try and keep that body pointing towards your target. And the last thing that you have is your hand. So at this point, your hand is getting ready to do another windshield wiper. So in my mind, I see two windshield wipers. I see one windshield wiper with my forearm, and then I see another windshield wiper with my hand. So ideally, you want to try to have a really neutral grip, a soft grip, not too soft that you're going to lose the racket, but soft enough that you're going to allow your wrist to rotate. And eventually, the tip of your racket needs to finish behind the shoulder, and the butt of the racket needs to finish in front of your shoulder, again, with enough room for your chest. And I don't get tired of saying this, you need that core really tight because there's a lot of rotation that's going to be happening. So we're almost done with the stroke. At this point, we need to try and loosen up the hips a little bit, keep the core tight, and let that right hip come forward so that you can start landing. So there you have it. That's the forehand. Now there are a lot of nuances, there are a lot of different styles, but if you can keep this fundamental basics of your forehand, you're gonna have power, you're not gonna lose power because you have balance during the stroke, and it's gonna be easier for you to be accurate by using all your body as a unit that is actually going in the direction of the ball. If you like this video and you found it useful, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel.